It's time for our daily dose of cope. And we have Chichi Kachiyama at the correspondence desk with this plate full of faces. These people really thought that they were voting to own the libs, and now they can barely afford their own lives. And I'm here for it because these tariffs are smacking them in the face. Well, whatever is left of it. Let's jump into some of these stories. Dale is definitely MAGA. He's definitely GOP. He says, I stand with Texas, close the border. This is one of his profile pictures. And then back in March, he shared this. This article says Utah legislature bans pride flags from schools and public buildings. And to that, he says, good. Gay pride flags don't belong in public schools or government buildings. It does not need to be displayed for the kids who are just figuring out life and how to live. And the government is supposed to be blind and equal. But let's not be equal acting like gay people are a part of life and the government and work and all that. Let's not be equal to gay folks. Cool. And like I said, he voted to own the libs. He voted to get rid of woke and DEI and make sure that gay people were not equal and couldn't be represented. Cool. Now he can't afford to own the libs. He says the economy sucks major booty. My wife has been unemployed for 6 months. At least 20 interviews, no job offer. Everyone is broke and can't afford anything. Cost of energy has doubled. Cost of housing doubled. Cost of food has more than doubled. My pay is the same as 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was saving money. Now I'm pulling money from savings to make ends meet. I am laughing about this because he is having the day he voted for. I love this post. I love these people getting smacked in the face with tariffs. It just makes me so happy because they're surprised because they're dumb. All right, so this was posted in the I Love Conroe Facebook page saying, can someone explain in layman terms our having to pay taxes/tariffs on items shipped to us in the States? We ordered something shipped from Africa and had to pay UPS over $300 to reimburse them before they were able to give us our packages ordered. My ignorance is that I didn't realize we had to pay or it got passed on to us. I'm simply not understanding. I only thought Trump's tariffs were paid by the other country, not us. The UPS driver was only able to understand to tell us that's not what it cost UPS to get the package into their possession. I seriously thought the seller had to pay this, not us. I'm sure I'm missing things here. Please don't take my post as an opportunity to bash Trump or take this into a political post. I simply would like an educated explanation so I can better understand the process so that we don't repeat another purchase like the one we ordered. We live and learn, that's for sure. Thank you in advance. Layman's terms are like when Trump said that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Trump is a liar, and you actually believed him when he said that the other countries were going to pay the tariffs, that the companies here were going to eat the tariffs. You all, uneducated MAGA, poor MAGA, y'all believe Donald Trump. That's what's wrong. And it's hard to explain things in layman's terms because these terms are so simple, but you can't understand the simplest things because you're dumb. But it's not just that the uneducated ones are dumb. The educated MAGA are dumb as well. They make dumb decisions because they voted for this knowing what tariffs were. Like Scott Pittman knew what tariffs was, and he still voted for this because he's dumb, and MAGA equals dumb. That's an equation. I'm totally sure that is valid somewhere. Here's a tweet back from November. So this person says, MAGA, I voted for Trump because of the economy and prices being too high. Also MAGA, what's a tariff? And to that, Scott said, I have a degree in economics, i.e. written graduate papers on tariffs. And yes, I voted for Trump for the economy. Want to try again. He said that November 11th, 2024. And then on August 2nd, this person named Meacham says, is it just me or are grocery prices through the effing roof? And to that, Scott Pittman, the same person that said, I wrote papers on tariffs, said, I voted for Trump. But I'm going to be honest, since he's been president, my life has gotten way, way, way more difficult. The dollar's decreased, inflation's increased, my student loans increased $10,000 overnight, literally. The list goes on and on. I'm beginning to regret my vote. This is the reason why I said even the educated ones are dumb to me. MAGA equals dumb. That's an equation. Put that somewhere. One of the newest things that Trump is doing, he says that he is going to deny disaster funding for states and cities that boycott Israel. He needs everybody to get on board. This is groupthink. This is fascism for real. But, you know, we elected a fascist government, so that's where that is. But Alex Jones yesterday says this is no different than FEMA employees avoiding houses with Trump yard signs. And to that, here's Scott Pittman again. He says, this makes me think Trump isn't for America, honestly. He's not. He's bought and paid for. He is not for America. And these people that really thought he was for America, they're simply dumb, because MAGA equals dumb. Now we have this woman named Lisa. She's commenting on a post where these ICE agents are basically masked up and snatching folks off the street. And to that, she says, this is what 77 million people voted for, including me. She voted for people to get swooped up off the streets wearing masks without, documentation or due process. This is what she voted for. This is also what she voted for. Trump's Big Beautiful Bill is such a big, beautiful bill that it cut off my severely disabled autistic son's medical off to where he can no longer get medical attention for his needed medication. Good job, Trump. And to think I voted for you not once, but 3 times. Big mistake. She's like, I voted for racism. I didn't vote for this to impact my life. And to that I say, good. I hope that you really, really struggle, that you have to get like 6 or 7 jobs just to survive, because this is what you deserve. You deserve absolutely the worst. I went to her Twitter page. She shares these people taking this ivermectin. Remember, they were taking that horse medicine stuff? She reshares these posts. This man is literally eating this horse medicine, and this is what she's resharing. That's the reason why the equation MAGA equals dumb is really an equation that needs to get talked about more. Doge cuts, Medicaid cuts, all these cuts are going to impact poor people, veterans, older folks, people with disabilities. And Jon Stewart, he's upset. He's piping hot mad. All right, so he says, cutting Texas VA healthcare staff / personnel isn't what I voted for when I voted for Trump. Supporting our veterans, especially those who continue to require life-sustaining healthcare, I thought would become an even greater priority because Trump cares about veterans. What? Much to my surprise, that doesn't seem to be the case for the Trump administration. I'm more than just a little disappointed. This is just wrong. Longer wait times, delays in getting critical medical testing, and overwhelming wait times for corrective surgery and treatment has now reached a critical level. This is morally unjust, causing undue stress and frustration not only on our veterans, but also on their families. I suggest every veteran family members, and patriotic Americans contact your congressmen, women, share this article on social media, and push this topic up to all news agencies and outlets. Heck, call, text, or message President Trump about this. It must be an oversight or something, because he cares. Jean Bishop at the bottom says, husband, 2 sons, and a daughter-in-law will be affected by this. Hope this isn't true. It is true. They don't give a damn about people, and these folks are clutching at their pearls when they should be clutching at their faces because of the leopards are coming to eat their faces. Now, this was posted in the You Voted for That subreddit. Anita says, what about affordable housing and the astronomical prices of food? Most average Americans cannot afford $2,000 a month in rent, and that's for a place in the worst areas where you are not safe. I voted for you, but every single day, more and more families are becoming homeless, and these are families that used to be considered middle class, because he doesn't give a damn about all of that. And these people are learning the hard way. This is interesting. The owner of a restaurant called Trump Burger is being deported. He had a green card and was a supporter of Donald Trump. There's a lot going on with this story. First of all, the Trump brand doesn't really want to be associated with Trump Burger. So a cease and desist letter was sent to local restaurants by Trump Organization. One order faces immigration hearing. Roland Benny owns 50% of Trump Burger, but he is a green card holder and they're looking to deport him. Outside of the legal issues that's going on with the restaurant, it looks like he is in green card trouble, maybe he did something fraudulent. So he was in ICE custody for 7 weeks and released. But this is the issue. So this says green card trouble. The record has also obtained a letter from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, to a woman in East Bernard who claimed to be the wife of Roland Bieni. The letter dated January 29th notified the woman that USCIS intends to revoke approval for the I-130 form, petition for alien relative, that she filed in 2021 so that Bieni could keep his green card. The letter said USCIS conducted an investigation into the marriage and found, among other things, that no lease documents or other evidence show that you and Roland Bieni ever actually lived together during your marriage. So maybe that woman was committing fraud, and fraudsters and Trump supporters go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly, like MAGA equals dumb. Man, this works out. Anyways, outside of, they're fighting over who owns the restaurant. And like I said, the Trump organization said they don't want their name attached to this restaurant at all. But also, it seems like this man is about to get deported. Anyways, let me know what you think about all this. Join the conversation. The leopards are feasting. The leopards are getting fat. Don't forget to like.
Hello and welcome back to my series where I summarize and spoil classic books that you may have forgotten the plot to. Today we are covering 1984, and as always I attempt to do it in one part. Let's go! Just a quick content warning. This book is a little bit violent, especially towards the end, so if that's not something you want to hear, I completely understand. 1984, written by George Orwell, is an alternative history novel where after World War II we had nuclear fallout and now the world is controlled by 3 totalitarian governments. Our main character, Winston Smith, is actually a member of one of these governments, simply known as the Party. He works in the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to literally rewrite history to align it with current political views. This is one of the many tactics used by the Party to essentially brainwash the public. Another prominent item of propaganda that is featured in this novel is something called newspeak. It is a form of the English language that actually entirely gets rid of words even revolving around rebellion to try to squash the ideas of it. And it promotes something called doublethink, where you believe contradictory things at the same time. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, etc. And all of this propaganda is used to uplift their leader, simply known as Big Brother. But Winston does not actually support the Party. As the novel opens, he is expressing his disdain for the Party's absolute control over people's lives. They do not allow expressions of individuality, love, sex, or even free thought, going so far as to have the thought police. And Winston is actually fascinated with the main rebellious group in this universe called the Brotherhood. And he believes one of his co-workers, O'Brien, is actually a member of the Brotherhood, but he can never bring it up to him as there are spies for the thought police everywhere, and you don't know who is an informant or not. He also notices another one of his co-workers, a beautiful woman named Julia, but again, he doesn't say anything as she could potentially be an informant for the thought police. Winston keeps a secret diary that he uses to write all of his criminal thoughts into, and begins to write about Julia and O'Brien a lot more. Eventually, Julia passes Winston a note that simply says, "I love you." And they begin having a covert love affair, always on the watch for an informant or a spy. They eventually rent a room together in a working-class neighborhood above a second-hand store, where Winston actually bought the diary. Their love affair continues on for quite some time, and Winston is becoming increasingly paranoid that they are going to be found out. Winston actually becomes so paranoid that he begins having nightmares of rats. He actually gets a message from his other coworker, O'Brien, saying that he wants to meet at his apartment. O'Brien is a higher level worker than Winston or Julia and leads a life of luxury as a member of the inner party. But at his apartment, O'Brien reveals to Winston and Julia that he is actually a member of the Brotherhood and that he hates the Party, going so far as to even give them a copy of the manifesto of the Brotherhood. Julia and Winston return to their apartment above the store and they begin reading the book to each other, when suddenly soldiers burst in and seize them and arrest them. They find out that not only O'Brien is actually a member of the Thought Police, but so is the owner of the secondhand store that they rented from. And all of that was simply a means to an end to get them to commit an open act of rebellion. Winston and Julia are then taken to the Ministry of Love, where they endure months of torture and brainwashing. Winston is trying for a very long time to resist this brainwashing, but he eventually is sent to a room 101, which is notorious for being the last stop. And O'Brien tells Winston that he is going to have to face his greatest fear. O'Brien begins to strap a cage full of rats to Winston's head and says that he's going to let the rats eat his face. This causes Winston to finally snap, screaming and pleading, saying, "Do it to Julia, I don't care what happens to her anymore," which is exactly what O'Brien wanted. Winston is then released from the Ministry of Love, with the brainwashing being successful. Time passes and Winston and Julia meet each other again in the outside world. But Winston no longer feels anything for Julia, and he has accepted the party into his heart. And that's the end of the book. Now let's talk about some of the themes. This book actually had quite a large cultural impact. It popularized the term Orwellian because the author is George Orwell, and the term Orwellian is used to describe anything that is like full of propaganda and misinformation and totalitarianism. It also popularized the phrase Big Brother. If you've ever seen the reality TV show where they're all living in a house and there are constantly cameras and microphones watching them, that's where this comes from, as Big Brother is constantly present and constantly overwatching everybody in this book at all times. And I think the most interesting symbolism and use of homonyms in this book is his fear of rats. Because yes, he has a fear of like physical, actual rats, like the rodent. But rat is also a term that is used for a snitch or an informant, and he was always fearful of people informing the party about what was going on and ratting on him. And I wanted to go more into the newspeak that I referenced earlier because there is so much to it. Not only does it get rid of words that are related to the rebellion, it is an entire form of propaganda on its own, and I think the best way to tell you about it is just by giving you examples. It really wants to simplify the average person's thought process to the lowest level possible. There is no longer words like wonderful, fantastic, awful, terrible, like these descriptors. There is good plus good, double plus good, and ungood plus ungood, double plus ungood. It also shortens a lot of words and phrases. It shortens the Ministry of Love to Mini Love, Ministry of Peace to Mini Peace, Big Brother to BB, so on. But they also either entirely change the meaning of words or get rid of part of the definition. So words like equal no longer refer to things like rights or freedom. It is purely in the quantifiable matter. If you have two of something and two of something else, that is equal. But what's referred to as a joy camp in the book is a labor camp. The party and Big Brother don't want to just use newspeak to not allow expressions of dissatisfiement with the government. They want to get rid of people's ability to even express it. If you cannot tell, I am a huge Orwell fan.